For over 600 years, Romans had a name for the hour between their two sleeps. They used it to write, pray, steal, and conceive children in total darkness. In 1992, a scientist locked 7 men in the dark for a month and accidentally proved they were right all along. Here's what he found and what it means for how you sleep tonight. The Roman day ends not at midnight but at sunset. Around the 7th hour of night, roughly 9 in the evening by modern reckoning, a citizen of Rome banks the cooking fire, checks the bolt on the door, and lies down on a wool-stuffed mattress barely 6 inches off the cold tile floor. He is asleep within minutes, not because Romans were tired or simple, but because their entire biology is about to do something modern humans have completely forgotten how to do, and the proof was buried in plain sight for 2,000 years. Historian A. Roger Ekirch spent 16 years hunting through diaries, court records, medical texts, and prayer books. By 2001, he had assembled over 2,000 references to something called the first sleep and the second sleep, two distinct, separated blocks of rest that structured every night before the industrial age. The Latin term was prima somnis, the first sleep. It typically lasted 3 to 4 hours, beginning at dusk and ending somewhere near midnight. The interval that followed had its own name too, the watch, or in French, dorveille, a word meaning something between waking and dreaming. In the Roman household, the wife is often the first one up during the interval. The poet Virgil writes about her explicitly, a chaste housewife who tends her loom, waking before dawn, lighting embers, setting slave girls to work spinning flax by firelight in the long, quiet hours between the two sleeps. This is not insomnia. This is the scheduled night. The Roman medical writer Galen recommends the interval for studying. The French physician Laurent Joubert writes in 1574 that the reason poor men have more children than the wealthy is simple. They make love after the first sleep, when the body is rested and the mind is unusually calm and clear. That detail about conception is not folklore, it is biology. And in 1992, a psychiatrist at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland ran an experiment that accidentally confirmed everything the Romans already knew. What he found in that sleep lab rewrote the science entirely. His name was Thomas Wehr. He was studying seasonal affective disorder, winter depression, and he needed to know what human sleep looked like without artificial light. So he recruited 7 healthy men and gave them 14 hours of enforced darkness every night for an entire month. What happened next, no one expected. For the first week, the subjects slept erratically, catching up on what Wehr called a massive sleep debt. Modern humans, it turns out, walk around chronically exhausted and do not even know it. But by week 3, something ancient clicked into place and the men began doing something none of them had ever consciously done before. They split. Every single subject, without instruction or suggestion, began sleeping in 2 distinct 4-hour blocks, separated by 1 to 3 hours of quiet waking. During that interval, their brains showed elevated levels of prolactin, the same hormone that floods a nursing mother with calm. Wehr called it a state unlike anything in normal waking life. The men described it as deeply pleasurable, not anxious, not restless, peaceful, meditative, almost hallucinatory in its clarity. One subject said it felt like floating. Their bodies were orchestrating a biological event that industrial civilization had systematically suppressed for over a century without anyone filing a single complaint. Because nobody remembered it was gone. That is the strangest part of the entire story. Biphasic sleep did not vanish because humans chose to abandon it. It vanished because one invention flooded the night with light, and the body simply stopped receiving the darkness signal it needed to run its ancient 2-part program. But before we get to that invention, consider what humans actually did during the interval. Ekirch's 2,000 sources describe an astonishing range of activities. People prayed. There were specific Catholic prayers designated for the watch. They smoked pipes, they brewed medicine, they visited neighbors, they checked on livestock, they had sex, they interpreted their own dreams while still half inside them. The Romans were especially practical about the interval's military applications. Julius Caesar's generals record launching raids at prima nox, literally the first darkness, relying on the fact that enemy sentries, deep in their first sleep, were at their least responsive. The biphasic night was not just personal, it was tactical, and the story is about to get stranger. Because here is the thing Ekirch found that nobody talks about. The disappearance of segmented sleep does not begin with Edison. It begins a full century earlier in the cities of Northern Europe, and the mechanism is not the light bulb at all. It is something far more mundane. But first, you need to understand exactly how dark the pre-industrial night actually was. On a moonless night in ancient Rome, the darkness is absolute. No streetlights exist outside a handful of oil lamps at major crossroads. The Milky Way blazes overhead. Inside a Roman apartment building, an insula, 6 stories of timber and plaster, the blackness is total. A man cannot see his own hand in front of his face. This darkness is the trigger. The human brain reads the absence of light through the retinal ganglion cells and begins flooding the bloodstream with melatonin within 30 minutes of true dark. That melatonin surge is what initiates the first sleep. The interval, the second sleep. The whole ancient architecture runs on darkness as its operating system. Now consider what A. Roger Ekirch actually found happening in Northern Europe cities beginning around 1667. Paris installs the world's first systematic street lighting, 2,700 oil lanterns suspended on ropes across the city's major streets. Amsterdam follows. London follows. The bourgeoisie begins staying up later. The first sleep begins drifting toward midnight. Within 50 years, the interval begins disappearing from literature. The French word dorver fades from common usage. English diarists stop mentioning their night waking. It is not dramatic. There is no announcement. The two-part night simply collapses quietly into one, in the upper classes first, then spreading downward as gas lighting arrives in the early 19th century. And then comes the moment that finishes the job entirely. On the evening of October 21, 1879, in a laboratory in Menlo Park, New Jersey, Thomas Edison holds a carbonized bamboo filament inside a glass bulb pumped nearly free of oxygen. He connects it to a circuit. It glows for 14.5 hours without burning out. Edison understands immediately that he has not invented a bulb. He has invented a new night. He tells a reporter that he will make electricity so cheap that only the rich will burn candles. Within 15 years, electric streetlights are running in New York, London, Berlin, and Chicago. The human night is being industrialized in real time. Sleep medicine does not catch up for another century. By the time Wehr runs his 1992 experiment, the concept of segmented sleep has been entirely erased from medical literature. Doctors are diagnosing the midnight waking interval, when it appears, as sleep maintenance insomnia and prescribing barbiturates to suppress it. They are, in effect, medicating a natural biological state out of existence. Ekirch estimates that a significant portion of what gets diagnosed as sleep maintenance insomnia today may simply be the body attempting to reinstate its ancestral two-part program. The interval is not broken sleep. It is the oldest sleep, and there is one final detail that makes this impossible to ignore. Wehr's 7 subjects, after a month of living the ancient schedule, scored significantly lower on anxiety measures than when they entered the study. Their prolactin levels during the interval were comparable to those measured in meditating Buddhist monks. The midnight hour was not dead time. It was, physiologically, the most chemically serene window in the entire human day. Modern chronobiologists now distinguish between sleep pressure, the adenosine buildup driving the first sleep, and circadian rhythm, the clock signal that manages the second. The interval between them is a natural trough in both systems simultaneously. The body built a door in the middle of the night. For 2,000 years, humans walked through it every single evening. The electric light bulb did not just illuminate the night, it collapsed it. One invention, deployed across a single generation, erased a biological behavior that had structured human rest for at least 2,000 years, possibly far longer. The Romans had a name for the hour. Wehr's men rediscovered it in 1992. The question worth losing sleep over: was that hour yours to lose?